Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Raw Talk Lockdown conversation this afternoon. I've got a special lady in the room. Her name is Estelle Holworthy. She is the founder of the Regeneration Project South Africa, an amazing organization. And they are just going to go from strength to strength, in the years to come. It's an amazing organization doing amazing community work and upliftment. And she's also busy with a psychology degree. And Estelle, welcome to the Raw Talk Lockdown conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction, Patty. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's awesome being here with you. I am very excited about that time together. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm also looking forward to tapping into your heart. Estelle is super passionate about developing people and especially looking or especially people that have gone through trauma, etc. And obviously, the things that we are facing currently in lockdown, there's a lot of that going around. So I'm looking forward to tapping into that a little bit. Estelle, maybe just to start off, how have you experienced lockdown as a mother, as a woman, all of that?
Well, Freddy, it's been interesting. I'll tell you that much. It started off, I think, like it did probably for a lot of people. It was a bit of a shock to the system. It took a bit of time to just acclimatize, get into the swing of things again, find my feet. Of course, the schedule, everything had changed. From being a mother, from kids going to school every day and having that routine, to now having them at home every day and kind of stepping into that role of now being an educator while still trying to do everything else that's going on in your life. It was challenging. But I must say, as time progressed, and I think as I now began to find my feet, I started enjoying it somewhat. I did miss the interaction of being with other people, seeing people physically face to face. But, we thank God for Zoom. Zoom has made human contact, still possible. So yeah, it was rough, and then it got better. I had a lot of time to reflect and plan and think about things in a different way. So both positive and I suppose some negatives as well.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I, on the other hand, I'm not enjoying this at all. I'm so I like physical touch isn't necessarily one of my love languages, but I'm just so looking forward to tapping someone on the shoulder and saying, well done or something. But it's good to hear that you are doing well, especially you and your family. I want to ask you, with regards to the work that you've been busy with. I know you've been busy with a lot of youth projects within your community that you are in, also outside of it. But how do you see the lockdown affecting the youth currently and maybe towards the future?
Well, Ferdi, I think, the reality that I just stated for you with, people having needed some time to adjust to the changing landscape is something, it was kind of a common theme, conversations that I've had with many people. These people like you who are more extroverted, you prefer to, I suppose, be out in the world, who may have found it a little bit more challenging. And then there's people like me who's a little bit more introverted. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, right.
Well, sometimes. But for the youth, I think, some of the critical issues that's come up is, of course, the fact that we know the economy has taken a massive knock. and that's meant a lot of job losses. Now, we have come from a place where, economically we weren't in a very good place. I think 50% of the unemployed people in this country are youth between the ages of 18 and 35. That's a massive number of people who are frustrated, who've been frustrated. And now you add all of this, all of these dynamics with the lockdown that's come, companies closing down, more people having lost jobs and opportunities. It became really, really bleak. Um, so what we saw with, how the youth has been affected, we saw a lot of depression and anxiety being reported, people really struggling. People who'd never necessarily been exposed or confronted with that before, who didn't even have the terminology to describe what they were feeling, are now having these experiences. And of course, we know that, mental health services is still, it's either very expensive, or in the public space, it is not perhaps as accessible as it should be. So those are some of the themes that I've seen in terms of how this lockdown has affected the youth. So from an economic standpoint, it's kind of worsened an already bad situation in terms of employment. And then in terms of mental health, it's really really affected our youth. And of course, we know that a lot of people went to social media during this time. They were trying different coping mechanisms, and unfortunately, those spaces don't always have positive things to offer. But on the flip side, I have to say also that some of the things that excited me is that we have seen like a surge in online businesses, people kind of venturing out into that space, trying new things, people publishing books, blogs, YouTube channels, and so forth. So there's been a lot of online activity. There's been a lot of engagement in the online or e-commerce space, which is all good. It's all positive things. The other thing that I've seen is that is been quite, or that I consider to be quite positive, is that people have become a lot more interested in social and political issues. So they've become a lot more involved. What is going on? They've started asking those questions. I think we took for granted, perhaps, en masse, when we had the freedom of movement, and we could go wherever we wanted to go and do whatever we wanted to do. And when we had that freedom, we spent all this time on our phones and on social media, not necessarily paying attention to what's important. And then when we were confined by force, I think many young people found themselves now in a position of saying, but wait, let me start really doing some research for myself and figuring out what's going on in the world. And you would have seen, of course, there's been a lot of protests. There's been a lot of social justice movements and things like that. And I think that's all informed by this kind of shift in mentality, specifically amongst the youth, of just saying, there's a lot more going on than we really know, than we've cared to find out about, and it's time for us to get informed. So those are some of the things I'm excited about.
Definitely. Yeah, that's very true. So I want to go just take a quick step back, and I think you mentioned the mental health aspect of this, in particular with regards to the youth.
Yeah.
So do you think the uncertainty component of this lockdown period played a big role in creating these social ills or the mental state of the youth, the uncertainty component? Do you think, as mature leaders, I'm not talking necessarily about government, I'm talking about those who stand in leadership positions in communities, could have done, a little bit more to create a less uncertainty? Because I think, I like certainty, I like things that I know it's going to work out. And the moment it becomes uncertain, I become anxious, but I've learned how to cope with that, and how does and I think obviously there's with this happening to the youth, they're not necessarily in the place where they know how to cope with it. So do you think uncertainty plays a big role in it? And then secondly, do you think leadership in general could have done more to create less uncertainty?
Well, absolutely, Fadi. I think yes to both of your questions, but specifically with regards to uncertainty, you are quite right. Uncertainty does tend to create anxiety. It creates almost a gap, right? And as people, we are naturally inclined that when we find that there is a space, we want to fill it with something. We want to create meaning. And, it's like, I need to think of a good example now, but basically what I want to say to that is absolutely, it has created, the uncertainty has created quite a great deal of anxiety. People have kind of been feeling lost. There's been a lot of information, conflicting information from our leadership, from what we've previously considered to be highly trusted and respected organizations and institutions. We've got a lot of conflicting information. Things have just been changing rapidly. Today we get information saying, do this in order to prevent that, and tomorrow that is no longer relevant. And of course, all of that, it adds to the stress, to the anxiety, ultimately. So in terms of leadership, yes, I think initially our leadership in this country specifically did what they thought to be right. I think they did think that they were taking a very forward-thinking approach about all of this. But honestly, I think perhaps the lack of research, the lack of scientific evidence with this whole thing has maybe fueled some bad decision-making on their part. And then once again, I want to refer back to the fact that we were in a sensitive place to start with. And I mean, I'm really softening things up when I put it like that. We were not in a good place to begin with. So there was already a lot of tension there. There was a lot of tension from a mental health perspective. A lot of frustration that had been built up over years. We've been dealing with incredible levels of poverty in this country. We've got young people who are energized and passionate, and they have either no direction or they have no resources. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it ends up being a lot of frustration. Now you couple frustration with uncertainty, you end up with anxiety and depression. I'm being very simplistic about it, but it's a short kind of road. So yeah, I think our leadership could have done more. I definitely think our leadership could have done more. But I think we also need to maybe start changing the way we talk about leadership, just as you mentioned. I think we need to start thinking in terms of sort of micro communities instead of these massive structures of leadership that we've always relied and depended on. We need to get back to almost the traditional realization that it begins in the home. Community starts essentially in the home, and then it goes outside of the home to your broader community, your extended family, etc., and it grows from there. But I mean, if you get the basics right in the home, so you were saying, for example, that you also experienced a great deal of uncertainty, but eventually you learn to cope. But if I would almost risk assuming that you have a fairly good foundation to start from. If I'm looking at somebody who's been raised without parents, or maybe in a single parent household where there's been abuse or neglect or whatever the case might be, and then you add all of this economic pressures on top of that, and then you throw them in a lockdown, it's just not a good situation. Yeah. So I think ultimately for me it goes back to the home. We need to scale down. We need to scale down from the massive structures. I think if we start getting it right in those micro communities, then we can begin to impact and influence upwards.
Yeah. Look, I couldn't agree more with you with regards. Look, I think obviously the macro leadership's sphere in our society, I believe, could have given more direction. I think, the Bible actually says where there's no vision, people perish. And then it's times like this we need vision, and especially the young people. They need to know what is going to happen hereafter. Um, and, the biggest talking point currently is not what is happening hereafter. The biggest talking point is let's put in measures to stop corruption, So that doesn't create a lot of, what's the word, confidence in leadership. So, but yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on a micro level as well. I do think. Oopsie daisy.
I lost you for a second there.
I also lost you. So tell me quickly, where was I lost?
Well, you said something along the lines of macro leadership,
Okay.
and where there's no people perish.
Yes.
And that's the last I heard.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So hopefully this thing is recorded. We'll just sort of edit it and then take it from there. But in any case, I think from a macro scale, leadership could have done more to talk about the future and what is going to happen hereafter to create, confidence in the future. Currently the most talked about point within government is not even the virus; it's corruption. So it doesn't create confidence in the youth, and I think. I think ultimately we're doing the youth injustice as adults, as leadership, because we're not creating structure for them to stand on and to build on. And again, like you say, when it comes to a micro level, going into the homes, our parents haven't experienced anything like that. And if they're not directed by macro level leadership, how can they, direct, the home sufficiently? So it's a vicious cycle, but ultimately, in times like this, and if it's not addressed, it's the poor and the youth that will pay the price for what's going on around us. So I definitely share your sentiment. For the listeners out there, the other day, Estelle is actually very passionate about what she does. Is the other day I saw a video clip on Facebook where she spoke about a young man living on the street, and especially he was a youth as well. And it really moved me a lot. And that's, part and parcel the reason why I decided to get her onto this talk. It's just to get. We need individuals in society that has got a passion and a fire for the youth, like yourself, Estelle, to start something new, to start something fresh. And firstly, I want to compliment you for that. It really moved me, the video clip that I saw of you. But moving on, in terms of the questions. There's so much to talk about. I think when you talk about youth from an economic point of view, social point of view, I think you answered it perfectly now in saying that it all starts in the house. Do you think parents are equipped to take the current youth into the future that we are bound for? I think this tech age that we are living in, the things that youth are exposed to, do you think parents are equipped to lead on a micro level this current youth generation?
Buddy, that's a great question. Look, you and I both know the landscape has changed. Okay. We know that we have moved throughout history from a traditionalist view of the world to a modernistic view of the world and then a postmodern view of the world, and and we understand with each of with each of those changes, different challenges have presented themselves. But what I want to say to that is that certain things just will never change, right? Your fundamental core values that I think as humanity we all hold dear. Things like respect, right? Compassion, kindness. And I think you don't need to be a tech genius in order to instill those values into your children as a parent. So even if you don't know how to use or work your cell phone, that's okay. But you can teach your child about respecting others, respecting yourself. And I say that because it's one of the things that I see is dwindling in our society at a rapid rate. This whole freedom of speech thing, and everybody is entitled to an opinion, which is fantastic. Your voice is important and it should be heard, but I mean, you need to speak with consideration and care for the person who is listening to you as well. Otherwise, you're just speaking to yourself, really. So I think that is what we need our elders and our parents for. We still need those traditional values. They are the things that form a strong foundation of any society. And when there's a vacuum there, it shows. It really shows. I've experienced, for example, I do quite a bit of community work or community engagement. And I've experienced a couple of community meetings where there's different people from different age groups or different generations rather. And it's almost consistent in the behavior across the different generational groups. So you have I'm not going to use the millennials and all of that, but let's just say your older people, your middle aged, and then your younger people. Your older people value certain things. They still value respect. You have your very young, your maybe 18, 25-year-olds who are much more emboldened in what they want to say, which is great. We need that. We need radical out-of-the-box thinking. We need that passion and that energy. But if it is not tempered by something of substance, then it just becomes noise. So the two absolutely need to coexist. There is wisdom, there is experience that we need to tap in, that our youth need to tap in from the elders. We just cannot live without. And I think with all of this fuss about technology and 4IR and all of this, interesting stuff, that the stuff that really has meaning and will continue to have meaning seems to be getting lost in translation. And I think we need to highlight those things again. I think as a parent, for me, it's important to teach my kids about those values. It's important, as much as I know we are all about self-love and you've got to take care of yourself, and that's great, but not to the point where you become self-absorbed and you cannot really relate to someone else's feelings and show empathy or concern for the next person. You become somebody who's unrelatable, if I'm using the correct terminology. So there has to be balance. I mean, as a believer, I believe that our God is a God of balance. There cannot be too much weight on either side. Then when there's imbalance, there's disease in our bodies, for example. There's, there's different types of natural disasters. It's just imbalance always speaks of disaster eventually. So we need both. I hope I haven't waffled on too much.
No, not at all. Makes complete sense. And I think, technology has allowed us to voice a lot of our opinions, like you said, express ourselves and all of that. But one thing that technology hasn't done is it doesn't teach us how to listen. And I think maybe for the youth is, for all the youth that might be listening to this talk is, yes, we want to hear you. We want to hear your heart. We want to hear the passion that you have, etc. But probably one of the most important qualities that any leader, any community leader on a micro or macro scale is you need to learn how to listen to others. And it's in listening that we actually sometimes grow the most. So I fully get what you're saying. It's those basic things. And I want to encourage all the parents that might be listening to it. Is maybe it's just time to go back to the basics and, sit around the table, have supper together, as opposed to sitting in front of a TV or technology and all of that. Estelle, what do you see? What do you want the youth to take out of this lockdown experience in terms of what do you want them to learn out of this experience?
Sure. Fadi, I think we've touched on quite a few of that, a few things that I would want them to learn or take away from this experience already in our conversation. But if I can just add, or maybe just reiterate on some of that. So you've just mentioned it, go back to basics. Family and connection is something that we've missed by force during this time. I think we've undervalued it because it's always been so accessible, so freely available. And I think we've all collectively realized just how important it is. We human beings, we thrive on connection. We need it literally for our survival. And I mean, studies have shown that if you leave people in isolation for an extended period of time, then mental health issues occur. So, use the time post-lockdown to reconnect with your family, reconnect with the people who matter. But also, while we are still in this situation, find your inner compass. So if you believe in God, connect to God. Find and hear His voice for your life. Hear what His vision is for you, so that you can move and act and do whatever it is you need to do with purpose. Things are not necessarily going to get easier. We already know that if it is going to get easier, it's a long way off. It'll probably get worse first. So it's going to take some strength to navigate through this process. It's going to take some out-of-the-box thinking. It's going to take for you to educate yourself, inform yourself about what's going on, but not only just in terms of politics and all of the noise outside. Learn something new. Learn a new skill. Equip yourself with the changing landscape so that you're not lost in the noise. We are the future. And I read a quote this week that says that if young people don't begin to realize that we are going to pay for the mistakes that our elders are making today. So I think this person was speaking specifically in terms of all of the fraud and the loans and things our country is making. We will be responsible for paying those things back. Let's put ourselves in the best possible position to be able to handle what's coming. And that means we need to be equipped with knowledge, with information and wisdom. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that.
I love that. No, I love that. Back to the basics. Back to the basics. Estelle, last quick, what is your dream for South Africa?
Oh.
I know you're a big dreamer, so.
Well, firstly, Fadi, I'm very passionate, as you know, about seeing just people restored and healed.
Yeah.
I believe sometimes it's as if I can feel God's heart bleeding for our nation and for us as a people, everything that's going so wrong and the amount of pain that there is in this world. So I would like to see us be in a place as a nation to be able to heal, firstly to heal collective, and then to begin to thrive.
Yeah.
So that's my passion, man. I want to see a thriving South Africa, and I know it's possible. Possible. We have brilliant minds.
Yeah.
Across all cultures, across all religions, across all races. We are an amazing, diverse people, but we need to begin to heal. So
Awesome. I love that. Heal our land. And Estelle,
awesome.
let me just say this. I think you're going to be a tool in God's hand in that healing process. So, yeah, get ready.
Thank you, Fatty. I appreciate that. I really do.
But yeah, to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. I want to encourage you to go and check out the Regeneration Project as well. They do amazing work, and like I say, they are going to go from strength to strength and be, like I said, that organization is positioned in a particular way to bring healing and to develop and uplift communities all across South Africa. So everyone go check it out, follow them, support them. They're going to do great things. Estelle, it's been awesome talking to you. Thank you for your time, and you're a superstar.
Thanks, Fatty. It's really been nice. It's been great to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Keep doing what you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you. Bye.